What's going on, everybody? It's SaltyTreecko. Today we're going to be talking about GameRant. Now, the name GameRant might have just made some of you throw up in your mouths a little bit. Apologize for that. It's no secret that GameRant and gaming journalism in general is kind of a joke, and always has been, and potentially always will be, and we're going to be using this article as an example of why that is, because I think it perfectly highlights just the problem with gaming journalism in general. So we're going to be looking at this article that came out about a day ago. It's about the ban of Gliscor from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet OU singles, and it's called How Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Meta Led to a 17-year-old Pokemon being banned. So, this article starts out very good. Let's read the highlights. Gliscor has been banned from the competitive Pokemon Smogon OU format due to its combination of elements that made it too powerful for singles battles. This is true. The banning of Gliscor has sparked mixed responses from the competitive Pokemon community, with some supporting the decision and others criticizing it. This is true. With Gliscor out of the picture, the competitive meta for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet could see a significant shift as new Pokemon step in to fill the gaps left behind. This, once again, is true. Alright, let's continue on. Competitive Pokemon Scarlet and Violet players will have one less critter they can use for single battles, as a popular Gen 4 mon has been banned from the Smogon OU format. The Council of Competitive Players that determines a critter's usage tier for the Smogon format recently decided that Gliscor should be banned from the OU tier due to a combination of elements that made the ground flying type too powerful for standard competitive single battles. That's a mouthful. As a result, the competitive meta for Scarlet and Violet could see a dramatic shift now that this threat has been removed from the competition. Now, if you're not familiar with competitive Pokemon in general, this may have seemed like a perfectly reasonable and flawless almost paragraph, and it's actually completely wrong, but we're going to come back to that later. We're going to continue on and address a different, more glaring problem at first. Gliscor has been a staple of the competitive scene in Pokemon series since it was introduced in Gen 4, but became a standout competitor when hidden abilities were introduced in Gen 5. With the addition of the Poison Heal hidden ability, Gliscor could reliably heal itself when holding a Toxic Orb, which would inflict it with the Poisoned status condition and activate Poison Heal, allowing it to regain some lost health each turn. Combining this hidden ability with solid defense and HP meant players could use Gliscor to poison the opponents with Toxic and then stall them out of the battle until they faint from the poisoning. Now, this is a very surface-level analysis of Gliscor. It takes it as if it's just a die-hard Stallmon, when in reality Gliscor is mostly used on balanced teams, especially in Gen 9 because Stall really doesn't exist. This was maybe more so true in the earlier gens after Gliscor came out, but it's not necessary. It's not completely wrong. And it's definitely not the reason why Gliscor was banned this generation, but it does still hold an element of truth to it, so I can't completely criticize the author here. Now he goes on to list a standard Gliscor build for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet OU, and in fact, this is actually completely correct, although they did, looks a little familiar to, exactly what Smogon wrote, but, that's here nor there. While Poison Heal is the star of this Gliscor build, the reason why this critter became so popular in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet meta was due to the threat of Go. The presence of Go in the meta has made entry hazards incredibly popular, since the Ghost Steel-type mon can block opponents from using a move like Rapid Spin and removing the entry hazards. Gliscor is a very versatile mon that can both tank, as well as set up entry hazards like Spikes, Toxic Spikes, and Stealth Rock, giving it great synergy with Go. This is completely true. In fact, that is the main reason why Gliscor was banned, because of its entry hazards. It can be incredibly annoying to KO Gliscor thanks to its bulk, poison style tactics, and water Terra type, plus the presence of Go means players have had to limit the movesets of common hazard removers like Great Tusk and Mamoswine. Hold on a minute. Common hazard removers like Great Tusk and Mamoswine. Once again, if you're not familiar with competitive Pokemon, this may seem like a completely normal statement to you, but anyone who has ever basically played any OU Pokemon, or any OU format of almost any generation, and has used Mamoswine, well, let's just go to a little set I've created here. So, this is a Mamoswine with every single hazard removing move in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and basically every hazard removal move that has ever existed. Notice how Mamoswine learns none of these moves. And, just in case you thought of it, Mamoswine has never learned any of these moves. In fact, Mamoswine is not only not a hazard-removing Pokemon, it is not a support Pokemon, and it is actually weak to entry hazards. And is usually the Pokemon having the entry hazards removed for it to come in and then use its offensive capabilities. The closest thing I can think that the author was trying to scrape at here was the fact that Mamoswine sometimes uses Stealth Rock, but once again, that's sometimes. It's by no means a hazard setting Pokemon. It's more an offensive Choice Band or Life Orb Focus Sash type Pokemon. So there are really two options to what happened here. One is the author just doesn't know what he's talking about and doesn't play competitive Pokemon, which, as we'll get into later, is the more probable answer. Or two, he mistook Mamoswine for a different Pokemon, put down the name there, and then just didn't come back and read the article. Because once again, really any competitive Pokemon player, like, the second I saw Mamoswine and Hazard Removal in the same sentence, I got a little curious as to what was going on here. So, yeah, it's objectively wrong, but it could just be a stumble, you know? Maybe this guy actually doesn't know what he's talking about. It could have just been a mistake. You never know. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's a mistake. Let's go to the next paragraph. Now that Gliscor has been banned, it's likely that a historically popular creature like Landorus T will be back in the singles OU spotlight now that it doesn't have to worry about Gliscor's toxic and entry hazards. So here's the thing. Landorus kind of has a flying type, right? So the number one entry hazard that Golden Go is trying to get up, which is Spikes, is immune to. But once again, maybe Stealth Rocks is just that important. And maybe, despite the fact that it's not run on most Gliscor sets, maybe it's Stealth Rocks. Additionally, Great Tusk's moveset could now open back up, that its likely entry hazards won't be a major part of the meta. And this is where shit really falls apart, I can no longer give this author the benefit of the doubt that they have ever been involved in the Gen 9 competitive Pokemon community. So, let's talk about the statement. Now that it doesn't have to worry about entry hazards won't be a major part of the meta. So, let's talk about pre-DLC competitive Gen 9 singles. And let's talk about Glimmora. So Glimmora was a very commonly used Pokemon. I'd say it was hovering around top 10% of usage. And literally its only purpose in the battle was to get up Spikes, Stealth Rocks, and T-Spikes, and then faint. Okay, maybe later, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe after DLC came out, in Pokemon Home, maybe things were different. And then you realize that Samurott Hisui was maybe even top 5 in usage for that entire time before Gliscor came out and took its spot as a hazard setter. So no. And yes, entry hazards are going to continue to be a large part of the meta, and Gliscor has nothing to do with this. And in fact, now we are likely going to see a rise again in Samurott Hisui, which we already are. We're already seeing a big rise in Samurott H coming back, because it has Ceaseless Edge instead of Spikes, and that is most commonly what it's used for. Golden Go's future may also be in question as the community continues to agree that it's the problem instead of Gliscor and is deserving of a ban. So now that... Okay, let's put these two sentences together. Entry hazards won't be a major part of the meta. Golden Go is the problem and is deserving of a ban. So if entry hazards aren't going to be a major part of the meta anymore, why would Golden Go be banned? It's, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And you can tell that the author just doesn't play competitive Pokemon, and he likely got his information from other sources, such as, most likely, YouTube. And now that we've basically confirmed that this guy just kind of doesn't know what he's talking about, let's go back up to this, which it's another kind of nail in the coffin here. The Council of Competitive Players that determines a critter's usage, blah blah blah, has recently decided that Gliscor should be banned from the OU tier. Gliscor was not quick banned. Gliscor was suspect tested. There is a big difference. A quick ban is when the OU Council decides a Pokemon is too overpowered and decides to ban it from the OU tier. However, this is not what happened here. Gliscor was suspect tested, which is where Pokemon players in the competitive community come forward, they get their suspect rests, and then they go and do a vote. This was not a council, a mysterious fucking council of shadow people deciding Gliscor's fate. This was a community-driven vote. So not only does this person not really know what they're talking about in terms of the competitive role of Gliscor in general, and just the competitive Scarlet and Violet OU landscape, they also don't know how tiering action works. So this article really, once you start looking into it, it falls to pieces. It's just bad. And this is why GameRant and gaming journalism in general is just so bad. Because the people just really don't have an in-depth understanding of what they're talking about, which is how you get mistakes like this, where, sure, as an article, I guess, like, it's not completely terrible, there's a bunch of things that are in fact true, but then there's just a bunch of inaccuracies, and you can just tell they don't know what they're talking about. Now, this is GameRant's page for the author of this article, and by the way, just don't target this guy. He's just trying to do his job, man. Like, he's just trying to make a living talking about funny video games. This isn't his fault. This is a problem with just gaming, quote, journalism in general. So don't target this guy, absolutely not. But if we read his about, it says, Drew Swanson is a lifelong gamer with a passion for a variety of genres, a connoisseur of everything from JRPGs to Souls-likes, to niche indie titles and horror games. He finds joy in favorites such as Elden Ring, Persona, Pokemon, Resident Evil, and more. Now notice that Pokemon was the second to last thing that he listed out of JRPG, Souls-like, niche indie titles, horror games, Elden Ring, Persona, and then he talks about Pokemon. He just kind of throws Pokemon in there. You can tell that this guy doesn't, like, just reading his bio, he isn't very in-depth in the Pokemon community, and especially not competitive Pokemon. And this is something you see a lot with articles about Pokemon in general. They don't really understand the competitive Pokemon landscape because they just haven't been involved in it. And you get a lot of inaccuracies because of that. And that's how you get top 10 list of top 10 best dragon types, and it has fucking Duraludon or something as number 1. That's how that happens. So, once again, don't blame this guy. This is just a problem with the community at large. I'm gonna end this video by giving GameRant 2 proposals. 1, you hire me for a reasonable sum of money to do all your articles on competitive Pokemon. 2, you pay me $10,000 and I'll take this video down. Those are your 2 options, GameRant. My business email is in my About section of my channel. I expect to be seeing an email from you shortly. Everyone watching, make sure to smash like, smash subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.